everybody, and welcome to our very first episode of our new podcast by 17 Hats. It is called Hats Off, and we are diving in today to talk unfiltered, raw business experiences and business knowledge. And for the first guest, I figured it was only appropriate to have my partner in crime, the founder, I guess not the CEO anymore, that would be me, but the founder of 17 Hats. I am so excited to have Donovan Janus here today to talk about everything business when it came to the creation of 17 Hats, starting it, the reasons why, what he's learned, all the good stuff. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Amanda Ray. I'm the CEO of 17 Hats, and I'm super stoked to be hosting this podcast. It has been years in the making. Donovan, you've heard me talk about hosting a podcast for a while.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, a while.
It's been a while. It really started 5-6 years ago already when we tried whiskey and wine.
Oh yeah, we did whiskey, and we wanted to do whiskey and wine where I would drink wine and you would drink whiskey, and we'd be up late at night and just talk shop talk.
But like many business owners, we got too busy with other stuff, so it took a few years, but here you are.
Just didn't happen. Several years later, yeah, here we are. We're doing it. So, super stoked. Few questions for you. I mean, we get this all the time. People ask us, I think, on every webinar is like, how did you come up with the name, and how did you come up with 17 Hats? It's such an amazing program. So, like, I know a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on like naming their business, and a lot of people stress about naming their business. So, like, what's your thoughts on that, and how did you come up with the 17 Hats name?
Well, I do think the business name is very important. Unless you're like Amazon and have $1 billion to spend and you can just brand it, um, and have the time and resources to do so. I think for a business like ours, it's kind of important to know what it does, or by the name, and or at least have a hint for it. Like one of the fun things about 17 Hats is that when people figure out the name, they get the aha moment and always get this smile on their face, like, now I get it.
They
Uh,
do. We see that on trade shows over and over again. We say, it's all the hats you wear. As a business owner, they're like, oh, that's amazing. And people get so excited about it.
yeah, so it was a couple of drinks in the United Lounge in Chicago to come up with the name. And a long time ago, when I started with computers, I had an Amiga, which most people don't know what it is. But basically, back in the 80s, early 90s, you had, Amiga and Apple and Atari. And Amiga named their company Amiga, so it'd be in front of Apple and Atari in the alphabet. So any trade show listing or any ad listing, they would be first. So when I came up with the name 17 Hats, I wanted to start with a number because a number is typically in front of the alphabet, even.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to start with a number one. And then it was like kind of going, well, 11 doesn't sound that great. 13, people think I say 30. Same with 14. So we kind of ended up with 17. And then by happenstance, if you take the numbers 1 and 7 together, it's the top of a hat. And then most importantly, of course, in this day and age, the domain name was available.
Yeah, domain name availability is obviously a super important part, but I love how it was a combination of like strategy, but also like practical, what makes sense, what people could pronounce, what was available. It was a combination of the two, which is really nice.
Yeah, and it also kind of fit with the brand we had in mind, which was kind of fun and cheeky, but with a serious undertone, so to speak, to run your business.
Yeah, so this is what always cracks me up because you're really fun and cheeky, and I'm not necessarily fun and cheeky, which makes it really interesting. I'm one of those people that like you make fun of me all the time because I say puns and I don't realize that I say puns and I laugh like 3 minutes later. I've never been that person. But yeah, I mean, your brand personality really, you wanted to be fun and cheeky, and like, why? What was the point of that for you?
Well, I think as a business owner, it's easy to get tied down in kind of the everyday struggle of running a business.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you run a business, it's kind of hard to imagine all the things that you have to do as a business owner, all the hats you have to wear, right? So a little bit of humor as relief, I think, is helpful. And then the whole point of 17 hats was to relieve people as well. So
Yeah, so the
yeah, breath of fresh air, so to speak.
yeah, so the brand tone matched the feeling that you wanted people to have as
Yeah.
well.
And business is supposed to be fun. You know,
Yeah.
at least for a solopreneur, you go into business because it's a fun thing, you're passionate about it, and then you kind of get dragged down by the reality of it. And 17 has to be the antidote to that.
I think you make such a valid point that most people on our platform, most solopreneurs, they do go into business providing their passion as a service because they love their passion, whether they're a magician and providing, magical performances, or they're a balloon artist or a photographer, videographer, whatever, coach. You go into it because you want to serve and you just love what you're doing. But yeah, you're right. When you start to realize all the crap you have to do on the business side of it, it becomes stressful, right? And that's the reason why people go out of business, burnout rates, people just can't think that they're doing anymore. They doubt themselves, is because all the other work that's not so fun ends up piling up. And I know that was like a big push in creating 17 hats. So, like, when you created 17 hats, like, what did you set out to do? I always love this because we're in year 10. We just turned 9. We're going into year 10. What we are now is very, very similar, but also very different from where we started. It's been a long journey and a long evolution of the platform, which has been amazing. Um, so how has that journey been for you, from the person who like sat down and created it and started it and had the initial vision,
Mhm.
to then now being president of the board and kind of watching from that, like, what has this journey been like for you?
Well, I think like any business owner, right? There are lots of ups and downs.
Mhm.
Um, when I had the idea, it was I've been a business owner myself for really since I've been 18.
Yeah.
So, I've had several businesses and some more successful than others. Um, but I've always kind of been blessed that it's always been kind of larger companies with a team. Well, more on the medium business side than really the small business side. Um, but I kept running. I kept seeing the same problem again and again that people had when they had their own business. And my first job was for a small business magazine back in the Netherlands that really tried to advise people with some of these problems. Um, but the advice is always one thing. If you don't have the tools to implement it, it's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And there's an article in the New York Times that really kind of outlined all these issues that people had. And there was a wedding planner, baker, and a ceramic business, and they all had the same issue. They were all just overloaded with paperwork, right? So, as a programmer, right, it was more like, okay, well, it's doesn't need to be that way. I mean, there's a there's enough computer power now to automate all of that.
So what year was this? What year was this?
Well, this was 2011. I think I read the article 2011. It was an article in the fashion area of the New York Times for some reason.
You're
Uh,
reading the fashion area of the New York Times. Is
I
That's
read
always
it.
fun.
No, I'm pretty sure it was linked on another website. I would not have perused the fashion area
The
of the.
fashion area.
Um, maybe in a different life, but anyway. No, and really, what I realized is that there's a tool for everything, but that was kind of part of the problem because you get this digital overload of having an app for everything. Your contacts are in one area, your invoices in another, um, your contracts in yet another one, and as a result, you still have to do everything. You just have to link everything together, which now is even worse because at least when it was on your desk, you would see it, but when it's on your computer, you don't see it at all.
So that's really interesting. Let's like take a moment to dive into this because I've never looked at it that way, is having an app for every single thing is actually worse than doing it all via paper. And I
Mhm.
think, or it can cause more headache. And I think, yeah, you're right, because you put it into this one app and then it goes away. And then you have to think, okay, you have to open the app back up and go, what did I actually do? What did I actually store in there? And then you got to go put that into the other application. If it's all on your paper, if it's all on paper, it's just right there and you view it all.
Yeah.
So it seems like a solution possibly, and could be a solution in some ways, can actually cause more frustrations and
Yeah.
people don't
Correct.
realize it.
And I was talking to business owners when I was kind of researching the concept. Yeah, many of them had said, "Well, I've tried things and it just didn't work because I had to learn a new system, and had to learn multiple new
Yeah.
systems, and as a result, I actually kept missing more things. So I would go back to my spreadsheet or pen and paper. So the concept was always like, well, if we can put everything in one app, now we can automate it, right? Like now it can be aware, like, hey, I sent out a quote, the quote was accepted. Now create the invoice,
Hmm.
right? And send the contract and send the questionnaire at the right time, do the reminder, update your bookkeeping, and all those things can happen kind of automatically,
Yeah.
where the magic happens and where the time savings happens. Because otherwise, if I do post it or put it in an app, there's really not much time difference, you know.
No.
Um, but if that post it automatically moves from area to area to area and takes care of the client,
Yeah.
well, now there's a lot of value being added.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes it makes, so much sense, because when we look at business owners, solo business owners to be specific, a lot of people are really great at providing their craft, right?
Mhm.
And they're amazing at providing their craft. But what we have found over the years of doing this is the people that are actually the best at providing their craft and don't have an automated system or a business management system, they actually go out of business faster
Mhm.
than people who are maybe not so great at the craft
Mhm.
and just do an average craft, but have an automated business system or a business system to help them. Right. And so the emphasis of, should I learn my craft or should I learn business when you're in business? I think people right now, people tend to focus on a lot of the wrong things, right? You need to learn business if you're going to have a business.
Absolutely. And the sad part is that so many people lose so much money because they're focused on the craft, but then they don't respond to their emails. They respond to their emails too late.
Yeah.
They respond to the wrong emails. I mean, typically as entrepreneurs, we're not the most organized to begin with. Otherwise, we have to go into that job.
No.
Um, right? So we like to go after the shiny object, and we like to be creative. We like to do all these fun things, but the paperwork, it might actually be fun for the first few weeks that you have a business, but after that, it becomes just another thing you have to deal with. And add that to all the other stresses that you have as a business owner, a lot of things start falling through the cracks, and eventually, that's how 5-star businesses initially become 3-star businesses, and then 1-star businesses, and then out of business.
Absolutely.
That 5-year milestone that people always talk about. Businesses go out of business within the first 5 years. It's almost always because you know people just get burned out. It doesn't have to do with them not being good at their craft.
No.
But if you're going to have a business, there is that part of business you have to take care of.
Absolutely.
That's where 17 has can make a huge difference. You asked how the journey was for me, and I guess the biggest hope and frustration at the same time, right, is that when you see people that get it and they invested some time to set things up, you can see their business growth.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal what can happen. And you can see the value being added. And on the flip side, you see the people that don't use it properly yet, right? And they just input data and they still do everything manually. And they're reluctant to invest the time in their business because it's just not as much fun. I get it, right? But to make time, you have to invest time. And
Yeah. It's like going to the gym, right? You can have a gym membership all you want, but if you never go in and use a gym membership, you're never going to get more fit.
yeah, or you go to the gym, but you do 1 pound weights instead of the proper weight you should be doing, right?
Yeah.
I went to the gym and nothing's happening.
Yeah.
You do have to work out properly, and it's the same I always said 17 hats is like the gym for your business almost, because if you put in the work, you're going to get a streamlined business.
Yeah. It hurts my heart when I speak with members and they're like, "Oh, I'm just using this or I'm just using this," and they haven't really taken the time to set it up and customize it for their business. It just it hurts. It's like, "Oh, let me help you do this," and we have so much help out there for people to utilize that they still don't do. But yeah, it's a conscious choice that people have to make as well.
Well, and I think that partly it is that you don't know that it's available even,
Hmm.
right? Yeah, even though you may have heard about workflows for automations or you know those things, unless you actually see it, like I have a little side
Yeah.
hustle, right? And I've been sending out invoices, quite a
It's
bit.
more than a side hustle. Come on now.
Um, but
That'll be another podcast.
you know, we call this side hustle for right now. And I send a lot of invoices for events. Yeah, I mean it's a pretty simple business. It doesn't require the type of automation that like a portrait photographer needs to do. I mean, it does require certain automations, but it's really on a different part of the business. So for where we use 17 hats, it's quotes and invoices and contracts.
Yep.
Um, you know, but when I send out invoices, before in the last few weeks, it's just been like every day we have more parties being booked. Initially, I would just create the invoice, create the customer, create the project, create the invoice, and then send out the email. But I would type in the date for each on each invoice, and I would add it to the email, and then add the person's name and all those things. Finally, like, this is silly. I should just add the tokens for the project start date and end date, time and date, and while it's a very simple thing to do, it still saves me, 3 to 4 minutes every
Yeah.
time I create an invoice. Now, when I create 5 invoices a day, that's basically half an hour, right? And more importantly, I can't mistype it. Once I put it in properly, once they come from the lead capture form,
Yep.
they put in their time, and now everything is already through the whole system.
Yeah, that goes back to that interconnectivity that you were talking about at the beginning, bringing everything under one roof. You can connect once they come in from a lead capture form, their data is stored. And for those of you who don't know what a token is a placeholder that is just going to automatically populate the contact's name or automatically populate the project start date or start time. And so I mean, it looks like you're using like email templates, right? So you instead of retyping the same emails, you're using an email template that has those tokens. So what used to take you, 3, 4, 5 minutes to do now takes you a matter of seconds.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just made. It took 5 minutes and properly created the invoice template with the right email template and the right product template,
Sure.
and yeah, everything runs a lot smoother already. And it's really small things like that that may not be immediately obvious. I mean, people immediately jump into workflows, right? When they open 17 hats, and
Yeah.
workflows are great, but there's a lot of interconnectivity and automations that you can do on a much smaller level. And I
Yeah.
think what happens often with business owners is that they yeah, they focus on the urgent rather than the overall goals. But then when they do focus on goals, they tend to go too big.
Hmm.
I want to have everything set up in 17 heads, everything automated. Well, that's a big time investment, and until you
Yeah.
really know all your processes, that might actually backfire as well.
It is adding up those little bits of value, right? So saving 5 minutes here, saving 5 minutes there. It's better to start saving time now than
Yeah,
waiting for everything to be set up to saving, a ton of time later.
correct.
So you used to have a saying when you still developed for 17 Hats, because you and our co-founder Reza,
Mhm,
I mean, you guys were like building y'all were developing from the beginning.
mhm,
Um, and so when we got our team of developers, and everything, like we really got our good push of clientele and everything was moving and grooving. You had this saying that it's more fun to put out the fire than it is to build the firewall.
yes. So. Yeah, I mean, 17 Hats, this company went through, different phases.
Hmm.
You know, our first year and a half, we had explosive growth. We had about 10,000 customers after 1 year,
Yeah.
which was fantastic. But it's very hard to keep up with the infrastructure, right? And we got some funding at the same time, which it adds a lot of additional pressures. Mostly from yourself.
Hmm.
And our initial investors were fantastic. I don't feel they actually meant to add any pressure, right? But when you get outside funding, it adds a bit of pressure. And
Hmm.
we were growing rapidly. We tried some different things. You know, but after about a year and a half, the wheels started to come off, right? And we had to restructure.
Yep.
Now, part of being an entrepreneur is that you love chaos.
Yeah.
Um, so, while it was a hard time, it was also a very satisfying time because we were really solving problems. And
Yeah, because chaos makes problems to solve, and
yeah,
solving problems, and then you feel successful. So it's all these little micro successes that add up to make you feel like you're doing well.
and we really made sure that we put in the right foundation. And as a result, I mean, the last few years with COVID, economy, they haven't really affected 17 Hats, which has
No.
been wonderful. Um, but I do remember that after we were kind of done with a lot of that restructuring, um, and it's like towards the end of 2017, I believe, and that's when I made that comment. It's like,
Hmm.
it's like, okay, well, now what? Because we built a firewall,
Hmm.
we don't have to put fires out anymore, and it's almost a little boring. And I think entrepreneurs, we tend to create our own problems sometimes,
Yep.
um, by putting out fires. It makes us feel productive, and really we're not. And if you want to grow a business, though, you need to put those firewalls in place, or make sure that these fires don't happen. You know,
Yeah.
uh, Problems will happen all the time as a business owner, right? But it's our job really to make sure the problem doesn't reoccur.
Absolutely.
Here's the problem, solve it once and for all, and then move on to the next problem.
Yeah. Well, and it's scalability, right? So
Mhm.
if you are constantly just solving problems, like it's busy work. There's one things to be solving problems that are strategic problems,
Mhm.
right? There's another thing to be constantly just doing busy work,
Correct.
right? And that's the hamster wheel.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to our dear friend Michael Gerber, right? And his saying of work on the business, not in the business.
Yeah.
And you have to work in the business sometimes to figure out what you need to work on. One of my previous businesses, I had a photo lab, and it's okay to go in the photo lab and ship orders if it's with the intent to see what you can do better. You know,
Yeah.
Not okay to go in the photo lab to ship orders just to feel productive because you have staff that can do the same thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, always trying to find time. I mean, you talk about staff, but I think as a solopreneur, right, going into your process, going into your system and going, okay, how can I simplify this a little bit? Because we do as humans, I feel like tend to just overcomplicate the heck out of it because we project a lot of our own secure insecurities onto our business. And so that does tend to overcomplicate things, which then overwhelms our clients, which then doesn't provide the best service, which then they don't refer us, right? So I think, yeah, absolutely. Going in, simplifying it, running through it yourself and go, okay, how can I give myself feedback to simplify this to make a better experience? I think that's huge.
Well, and I think it's actually critically important. I think you touched on something there. As a business owner, you're in charge of the experience. When very often when you talk to business owners and you talk about automating things and streamlining it,
Hmm.
they'll come up with like, yeah, but I have this client, they want this client wants that, right? And it's okay to say no, right? And I think it's critically important to say no, so you stay in control of that experience, and you can make sure they have a great experience. Yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes you have to say no and explain why, right? But you don't need to offer everything to everybody,
Yeah.
because then it's almost impossible to streamline. So most successful
Absolutely.
businesses, focus on one thing and they do it well. Where businesses often go wrong is when they try to expand out of their expertise,
Mm-hmm.
try to do too much,
I do everything.
or try to customize everything, and then you're reinventing the wheel every single time you have a client.
Absolutely. When you look at your journey with 17 hats, and of course, I mean, you've had multiple, but how many businesses before 17 hats? How many businesses did you have?
Free.
Three.
Mhm.
So now you've had five. You're up to five different businesses. Um, when you look at your journey, because I think being a business owner is being a business owner, whether you're running a team of people
Mhm.
or you are running, it's just you, right? It's still business at the end of the day, right? We still have leads, we still have clients, we still have to provide a incredible experience. So based on like, if you can go back and, look at your experience, like what are things that maybe you would have done differently? What are things that like you've learned like going into this next business that you're building that you're going to make sure that you do better this time? Because I think that's the glory of having multiple businesses is you learn from each one
Mhm.
and you can make adjustments. And so for somebody who's coming into business saying, "Man, I want to be able to start this like I've ran a business before, right? I want to be able to start it with one leg up, right? Like what's some advice that you can give there?"
To really think about the repeatable experience you can give your customers.
Okay, so you say repeatable. So can you dive into like what that means and why that's important?
Not to quote Michael again.
Oh, but do because he is fabulous. And for anybody who doesn't know Michael Gerber, he wrote one of the best business books of all time, right? The E Myth Revisited. He was our business coach for a while. It's totally a book you should go read. So, I mean, totally quote away.
And I mean, I wish I read the email sooner. And his whole concept, right, is that you build your business like a franchise,
Mm-hmm.
even though you're not gonna make it a franchise in all likelihood.
Yep.
Um, but it means is that you run your business like a business, and that may sound silly, right? But you run it like a business, and you have certain roles, and it's your job to initially create the role, define the role, and then hire people for the roles.
Yep.
So you can step out of those roles and move on to the next thing. And in most cases, when people start a business, right, they just create a job for themselves. And I've been lucky in the sense that my businesses have not been like that because there were software businesses or tech businesses, so by default, they really weren't. But yeah, it still is the same thing, or it's even more important when it is something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And with my little side hustle, I'm stepping into a whole new world again. And you see the same thing. I mean, the businesses that are successful there have thought about, okay, what is it going to be like for each client? Now you can
Yeah.
have multiple experiences, right? You can have your high-end experience versus a more budget
Sure.
experience, um, or you can have multiple revenue streams, right? But regardless, you should think about it from, okay, what is the first touch point till the last touch point, and what are the things I have to do in between, and what are the things I can do in between but don't have to do, and
Mm-hmm.
really spend some time thinking about it ahead of time, but also on a monthly basis, look at it like, okay, what can I improve? Or
Yeah.
where can I save time? Like, if you can save time, I mean, time is your resources that you cannot get any more of,
No.
right? So the only way you can make more time is by saving time somewhere else,
Absolutely.
or you can hire somebody, right? But typically, hiring somebody for a small business owner is a very big step because it's just so expensive. There's
Yeah.
nothing more expensive than staff, right?
Yes.
And then you add all the legalities around it. The less staff, the better. There's an old Chinese saying: "When you wish an enemy, the saying is, I wish you many employees,
Mm-hmm. And you're missing you're wishing somebody
a lot of trouble."
a lot of trouble. Now, I would like to proclaim right now that I love our staff. Our staff is killer and they're amazing. And if any of you are watching this, we appreciate every single one of you. And this is why we vet and handpick our staff so importantly, but also why we keep a very Our team is lean and mean because the more people you have, the more complexities you have.
Yes, right. And it only requires one bad apple to create a lot of toxicity.
Yes.
Um, but that's another podcast.
That's another day.
Yes, that's when we do the whiskey and wine podcast again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, but seriously though, I mean, the more you can streamline, the less staff you need, right? And some staff is fantastic. It's always nice to have people around and build something as a team.
Or outsourcing too,
Or outsourcing,
to
right?
be able to outsource. I mean, it's
Well,
like,
that's
like,
actually a pretty critical thing. If you want to outsource, especially, you need to have your process defined,
sure.
right? If you want to hire an answering service, for example, if you have 20 different options, you can train them to
No,
how to use the phone.
absolutely. I think it just goes back to overcomplicating, right? If you don't sit down and really think about it and plan it, then you keep adding all these things to do, which then creates the overcomplication. But if you would have just sat down and really like sat with it for a little bit and wrote it out, then you would realize how overwhelming and overcomplicated it is.
Correct, right? And most clients, I think this is another important lesson, you just want to be guided on what to do. You're gonna have your client once, here and there that like they know exactly what they want and they just want you to get it. Fine. But in most cases, if you give a client five options, they don't know what to pick. Right? I mean,
No, because they're looking at you as the professional. I think we forget that a lot, right? Especially as solopreneurs, we're really scared to step into the shoes of being the professional. And so we give them all the options because we're unsure and we're self-conscious when they're just looking at us going, "You're the professional, just tell me what the frick I need to do."
correct. Right. And I mean, you've always given this example of your students when you were an art professor or art teacher
Oh, yes.
uh, about they wanted to do whatever they wanted to do, and you give them a blank piece of paper, and they wouldn't know where to start.
Yes, as a high school art teacher, my kids would get so mad at me because they're like, "I want to draw what I want to draw." And I would be like, "Okay, cool. Like you're going to have time at the end of the semester and you're going to be able to do that." And so then when we got to the point that I'm like, "Okay, you can draw whatever," they were all like, "What do I draw?" I'm like, "What do
Mm.
you mean? You've been asking for this for like weeks." And they're like, "But I don't know what to draw." And then it takes them like forever to figure out what they're going to draw. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." But I think it's the perfect example.
Yeah.
People want, that freedom sometimes, but they don't necessarily thrive in it, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't know what they don't know.
Mhm.
And, they're looking at you again as the professional.
Yeah, and yeah, I always had this line. I can't think of the author now, but it's basically a software development book. And there's two type of people that get on a plane. Right? You have the people that want to go left into the cockpit and they want to know what every button does. They would love to fly it themselves. And then you have the majority of people. They just want to get to their seat and have the seat be as comfortable as possible, and just get to their destination.
Yep.
Right? And that's ultimately the smooth experience we should provide for our customers. Like you're gonna get the person who wants to go in the cockpit. For 99% of business out there, that's not your ideal client.
No.
But yet we're making all these exceptions to deal with their client because they're the pain in the asses, right?
Hmm.
So it's really more okay. We'll focus on the other 99%,
That's right.
right? And then try to generally encourage that 1% to go somewhere else. Let them be a nightmare for your competitor.
Yeah, it's either you trust me and trust that I'm the professional and know what I'm doing and what I provide and what I can do for you, or you go elsewhere and you should get a
Mhm.
referral code to your competitor, right? And you send them that way. Um, All right. So, one final question. So, if for people who've listened to everything we kind of chatted about today and your background, which I totally want to dive in, I mean, you're going to be on more podcasts. Like, I'm just going to sucker you in all the time, right?
We'll see.
Um, what is like the one action item that they can walk away from this podcast and do? Like, what's the one thing that you would think is the most important?
See, this is a question you should have preloaded. I could put some proper thought into it. Um,
But that's no fun. I like to put you on the spot.
I know. I mean, it really what I just said earlier. Take a day. Go. Don't go to the office. Go to a Starbucks. Have a different place where you want to go to.
Yeah.
Right. pencil it out just to work on your business, and start with reviewing all your touch points, right? Um, and then, and this is where the critical part happened, then kind of look at 17 hats, and be like, okay, what things can I save time on?
Correct.
What are the things that are inefficient the way I'm doing them right now? And this is something that you'll be working on for your entire life of your business. There's always things you can optimize.
Yeah.
Sometimes it ends up not being worth it, but right now, if you haven't done it, that's where you can make, I think, a big impact in your business. Like, okay, what can I streamline? Just look at it with like what I like to do is have an imaginary, advisor. You know,
Hmm.
programming, we call it rubber ducking, right? Because often you ask another programmer for advice, and the moment that you ask the question, the answer comes to you.
You know the answer. It's so weird. I mean, that happens all the time. You ask somebody a question and then you're like, oh, wait, I know the answer.
Yes.
But it's just saying it out loud
So,
triggers your brain.
so yes, so you can just take a little rubber duck and talk to the rubber duck and ask the question, if you don't have somebody to talk to. But yeah, frame, talk about your business, to either a rubber duck or if you have somebody, but just get your mind flowing and okay, how can I streamline this? Sometimes it's software related, sometimes it's just procedural. What are the things I can
Mhm.
streamline? What are the things that are taking me a lot of time? And you know, just taking that time to work on your business. You have, like I said, you have to invest time to make time.
Yep.
Um, you know, as business owners, we're so overwhelmed typically that it's hard to make that time.
Hmm.
But look at the problems that you have, and then, okay, what problem can I just solve once and for all? Right? And if you do that once a week, or even if you do it once a month, at the end of the year, you have 12 less problems you don't have to work on anymore.
It's so true. So, action item, sit down, write out your process, look for your inefficiencies, figure out which problem you can solve for once and for all, right? It's the small, making small improvements every day or every week. I think that is great advice looking at trying to figure out how to streamline your business for the better. So, thank you. Thank you for being on our first podcast.
My pleasure.
I had so much fun. It was so good to chat with you, even though I chat with you all the time. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with our people. And then, I don't think we say it enough. I mean, I think it would be really hard for me to get Reza on the podcast, which is the other co-founder of 17 Hats.
You,
Maybe,
you'll get them on.
maybe I should, but I don't think we as a company or as the community members,
Actually, that's a podcast I would listen to
is
because
Reza?
yes, so
Oh, I'm
you
gonna
know,
go tell him this in Slack afterwards. He's gonna be like, mm.
so funny story about Reza. So Reza and I have worked together for God, like
"Oh
25,
wait,
20.
I think you should. I think you should wait. I think maybe y'all should be on a podcast together because I know the story you're gonna tell
Okay, well, no, are you sure?
about how
No,
y'all met.
no.
Oh,
That's
okay.
no, we've worked together. We've known each other for 26 years. We've worked together actively for 25 years, as I'm counting the years. Um,
A long time.
that is a long time. But anyway, so Reza is a very quiet, very thoughtful individual, and um,
Grace is wise. I'm always like he's the wise voice behind 17 Hats.
but even back then, right? I mean, this was 25 years, 20, yeah, 25, 24 years ago when we had this incident or event. So we had a software company at the time. We went to present it at some networking event, and it was supposed to be 25 people. Had like 100 plus people. Yeah, I was like 19 or so at the time, so I was terrified. Uh, we had another business partner that did the actual presenting. And then yeah, I think Reza handled the computer. But anyway, that's neither here or there. But anyway, as we were waiting for the presentation, right, I am basically sitting in a corner, hyperventilating. Uh,
Because you're so social.
I'm not. um, so anyway, I'm just like off in a corner, just like, okay, leave me alone. And I look over my shoulder, and Reza, who's also very quiet typically, and you'd think very introverted, has like 20 people around him telling them all about the software, how amazing it is,
What?
basically holding court. So I think he would do amazing on a podcast, actually.
I've never seen Reza talk more than like one person at a time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you'd be shocked. So
Oh, yeah.
I would listen to the podcast
All right.
because he's very wise. And when Reza speaks, you listen.
Yeah, that is true. And our staff knows that. Our team, I mean, our team is very much so when Reza talks, everybody shuts up because something wise is going to come out of his mouth. Um, he's, yeah, for sure. But yeah, but I mean, I think, you know, we don't take enough time, our staff, our community, just to tell both of you, thank you. You know, I've been able to come in and work for 70 Hats since 2017, and it's been one of the greatest journeys of my life. You know, it is so amazing how helpful it is, and which is one of the reasons why we wanted to start this podcast, right? Is another way to show up and serve the solopreneur community, because I think the roots of service that you and Reza created, of serving this community and helping them reach whatever success that they are, you know, their goal is, right? There's all sorts of different levels of success, but you know, really showing up and serving and providing that education. I mean, you guys have planted those seeds and put those roots down for us. And so I am so excited to launch this, you know, another way with this podcast and with education of serving this community. So thank you for planting that strong foundation, those roots, those seeds, all those good things to, gosh, have this amazing product that we have in the world today, helping so many people. So thank you for being on our podcast.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
for being the first guest. I'm so excited. And I'm going to get you to come back on it soon enough. So, all right. Thanks, everybody, for listening to our first episode. We are super stoked to continue. Talk to you all soon.
Bye, everybody.